Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
How are you?
Was that evil? What was that?
That's the day after Halloween.
Day after Halloween. I'm doing good today.
That was like the Count Dracula, the way you did it. You were like, 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, all right. Wow, that goes into our title. It's 4 myths today.
Yeah, 4. I am doing well. I actually...
we really plan these intros.
Yeah, we do.
They're scripted.
Yeah, we work on them.
Word for word.
I was in D.C. and I got to support my brother while he ran the Marine Corps Marathon.
And you got to run in D.C. One of your dreams come true.
I did. Yeah, I ran twice while I was there.
Not the marathon, to be clear.
No, I didn't run the marathon, but I got to see a good dear friend that I had served with and went to West Point with and flew with, and so then I spent a good bit of time with my brother, and I don't get to see him a lot, so it's always nice to hang out with him, and it was cool being a spectator on a marathon. I that was fun. Yeah. So, but here I'm back. Everyone
is probably relieved that you're back. They're like, oh, Kylene's not rambling by herself today.
Yeah, well.
I'm going to ramble with Patrick. He's here to keep me in check.
I'll bring you back around.
Yeah. Whenever I go off on a tangent, Patrick can go, hello. All right. So today we are discussing 4 myths in the recovery community, also known as things that make Kylene's head explode.
Here we go.
Alternative title. So again, I could really go off on these. So that's why Patrick is here, to keep me in check. Yeah. All right.
You know, when I was actually thinking about this because I had a little bit of an experience in one of the groups I support where I was a little unaware of a level of wounding in somebody, and I wasn't as supportive as I could be. So I always think it's important when we talk through. And it was kind of a lesson for me. It's like, hey, you gotta make sure that you recognize where people are and the work that may still be in front of everyone. And so, you have people who, the combinations and permutations of recovery activity, level of, I guess you could argue, achievement. And sometimes you got to be careful with that, right? But level of relational healing and individual healing on both sides, there's a bazillion combinations, right? But I think what we're trying to do, or what we hope we're doing through this whole process where we talk about it, is we want the destination to be full health for everyone. That's really where we want to get to. So of course we're going to have some different opinions, and of course we're going to bring some things to bear. But I think it's important to say that we don't ever want to discount the level of pain that you've been through on both sides, right? And the level of trauma that you've been through, or maybe that there are some things that for some folks, it's a little bit of a flywheel. It doesn't quite connect initially, but it doesn't mean that it won't connect at some point. Sometimes there's people, my story of discovery and never relapsing again, that's not everybody's story, but that's okay. It's
okay. And part of the reason it's not more people's story is because the education out there says that that's everybody's journey is relapsing. Right. So we do want to bring to the forefront that it doesn't have to be your story.
Yeah.
And how does that not happen? How does that not become part of your story? By education, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to share stories of hope. We're trying to share the path of truth, the path of healing. And yeah, to your point, our standard is super high. The bar is really high. Me as a betrayed partner, saying, hey, we're going to stay in this relationship in order to do that. The bar was sky high. Mm-hmm. So we don't sugarcoat that. But that's one of the things I work on with my clients a lot. It's it's okay to have that bar, because if that bar is truth, if that bar is health, if that, if that is real recovery, then let's say that that's okay to reach for. Like that's absolutely okay. And I think what we're going to talk about today is that a lot of the messaging that we get through faith culture, through recovery culture, through sobriety culture does not actually help people get there.
Right.
And that's frustrating.
And I think is, to kind of conclude my point is we don't go through life unscathed. We just don't. No, nobody does. And there are woundings, there are different things. And some folks have been through very, very deeply traumatic physical and emotional things. And some folks maybe have been through maybe some slightly different things like neglect or whatever, but nobody goes through life unscathed. And so if sometimes when we say something, I think what you'll find is that it resonates, and sometimes it may not resonate at all. One of the things I would challenge you is if something that we say kind of hits you at a visceral level that maybe you disagree with it, explore that a little bit. Don't say, I don't know why I feel that way. Maybe be a little bit more like, why is it that I feel that way? Why is it that I feel great disagreement? Now, I mean, I believe that Kylene and I have done a lot of the healing work. I think we're in a very healthy place. But we still have work to do. I mean, there's going to be things.
It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah, I always, it's like just because you've been through a healing process doesn't mean that your old wounds may not resurface at some point, and the fears that you have may not resurface. And Kylene and I talk about that all the time. Like I have this wound that I'm unlovable, and it comes up at times, and I'm able to process through it. I'm able to recognize it, but it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. So I just have to be aware of it. So anyway, I just I would encourage all of you to be curious when you have feelings of either agreement or disagreement or whatever that is when you hear a message somewhere, just be curious about that and try to understand what that is. Give yourself time and space to kind of work through that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Trigger is a reflection of an unhealed wound. So
that's right. That's right.
Because we talked about this too, and the contrasting way to think about it is when you're super solid in yourself and you're super aligned, then if somebody says something that you disagree with, you go, I disagree with that, but it doesn't like activate you on the inside. And you still hold that disagreement, but you feel totally aligned with it.
Yeah.
If you're feeling triggered by something, it usually indicates there's some sort of internal conflict.
Yeah.
And that's where you're encouraging, like, hey, let's question, like, where is that coming from? Do I feel like I have to be defensive about this? Do I feel like this is some sort of attack on me? Is this a piece of me that needs to be healed or reflected on? What would bring me to the place where I can hear something like that? And either does that shift my opinion, or do I just need to feel more confident in my value system that no, I really know why I disagree with that and I'm okay with it.
Right.
Yeah, good. That was a long disclosure, Patrick.
No, I've had a lot of things on my chest.
And a lot of things on your mind. No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so for what we're going to call myths, and delete what you disagree with, that's fine. To your point. But we're gonna start it off with a heavy one, Patrick. We're gonna start off with the faith-based one. And that is this messaging, this, it's like this really subconscious, I think, in the faith community, message that your suffering as a betrayed partner is holy. And that it somehow is going to lead you to sanctification the more you suffer. And that is one of the most, like, I think, insidious in the Christian marriage, faith-based community, that this messaging gets shared in a lot of different ways. But ultimately what it leads to is this idea that, or it's this spiritual manipulation of betrayed partners through professionals or spiritual leaders. And what they do is they convince women that their suffering is somehow holy, instead of focusing on the reality that their partner is refusing to take personal responsibility for their actions and their choices. And then when this idea is perpetuated, it essentially gives the addict the permission to continue in abusive, harmful behavior, because they're really not being held accountable in the relationship aspect, right? The betrayed partner is sort of put under this light, and it's like, well, somehow you have control of your partner, because if you suffered more, or if you had more sex, or if you were a better partner, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And suffering in the Bible is really focused on suffering when you're being like persecuted for your belief, that you believe in God, that you believe in Jesus, that you're living according to that, and then people don't understand that and they are hurting you in some way. It's not ever like stated that it's in intimate partner relationships where you guys technically believe the same things. So I feel like it's a deep misuse that actually turns into and excuses abuse in relationships. And it also, you and I through this podcast so many times, it always comes back, always. And I think this would like heal the world in so many ways. It always comes down to, can we take personal responsibility for our behaviors? Can we just do that? And so I think this is one of those things that takes the responsibility off of the perpetrator, off from the person that's unhealthy. So I'm gonna pause.
Yeah.
I'll pause there, and then we can kind of talk about how it shows up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, certainly marriages have a difficulty to them. Relationship has a difficulty, and we all show up to any relationship we have carrying 5 pillowcases full of generational trauma and our previous wounding and things like that. And you try to mesh all that stuff together, and it doesn't always go well. And there's disagreements and all of these
normal stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's always these different things. I think sometimes it's this whole notion of like, well, everything should be fine, and don't ever talk about what's going on in your life and all of these things. But I do have a tendency to agree with you. It's like, when I think about the long suffering, being a Christian in the world can have some worldly what's it, deleterious
Discomfort.
Discomfort. It can create, if you look at some of the Bible stories, they were persecuted, for some of the things that happened, but God always gave them a way to fight back, and all of these different things. Like I think about the nation of Israel. There was moments where they were really able to fight back, and from some of those stories. But yeah, I think what you're saying, it's a little bit of a misconstrued message of like, well, no, this is your cross to bear. And let's get more specific about it.
Yeah. So things you can hear under this myth are, like I mentioned, well, just have more sex. That's going to solve the problem. So that then it takes away from the person that's hurting and puts the responsibility onto the victim.
Right.
And it also takes their autonomy and their consent away, because now you have to give of your vulnerability and your body in order to control someone else's behavior. That is so wrong. So wrong. Yeah. You just need to forgive. Like, hey, just, 70 times 7. So, if he keeps doing it, no worries. He said he's sorry. Or this idea of like, well, he's trying. So if someone's trying, you don't have any leg to stand on. Like, you can't be upset about it. You can't set a boundary. You can't be mad. You can't be hurt. You can't, whatever. You don't have you can't take any action because someone said they're trying. And that just like opens up this world of like, people that know this belief system and live in this. It's like, well, I know exactly what to say so that I don't experience any consequences. I don't actually have to change my behavior. Yeah. I can just say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because that's considered confession, which, no, confession requires repentance. And with repentance comes changed behavior. So that is a different scenario.
Well, it's like Christianese, right? Christianese says, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. You're like,
but truth means,
right.
I have a heart change. Yeah. So then how this shows up, behaviors the women might have in response to believing this is, I'm going to focus on their words, not their actions. So kind of like I just mentioned, well, he's apologized. So now I'm required to forgive, even though there hasn't actually been any time to see behavior change or true repentance. Like there's this pressure of what forgiveness means. And a lot of times, that's absorbed as, well, I'm not allowed to bring it up again. And then, the next week it happens again because no boundaries were set, no consequences were had. There's a misunderstanding like on both parts, and there's pressure on both parts, right? And that whole like, oh, I can say I'm sorry, and then like I know that someone has to forgive me kind of thing, right? So this just leads into like a cycle that's really, it can be really, really negative. And typically the person that feels the most pressure in these cycles is the victim, the person that keeps getting wounded. Another way to respond to this sort of belief is sometimes it's perpetuated. I don't understand this, especially in the Christian community that holds such a high perspective of what fidelity is. A lot of times there's this idea that's perpetuated in the Christian community that porn isn't cheating. So then when that is communicated, that it's like not as bad, it's not equal to an affair, it's not the same, which like spiritually and biblically like holds no water. Like it's crazy. It's a crazy from a Christian theological perspective. Like it's nuts to me that that's perpetuated as much as it is. But I think the reason it's perpetuated is because so many people in the church have a problem. So if they actually called it adultery, like the whole thing would implode, right? Like they're like, if we actually took responsibility for this, like we'd have a problem. So when the women think that porn isn't cheating, so I have to stay, they internalize that as like marriage is hard and we all have our struggles. And then they're like, well, I can't really do anything about it because it's not actually cheating, even though I'm dying inside feeling like you're cheating on me twice a week.
Yeah. I think the part of the reason that churches get stuck in that, let's not call it adultery, is because their way to solve like major sexual impropriety is to kick people out. So they're like,
I never thought about that.
Yeah, so they're like, well,
as a reason. I never thought about that as a reason.
Yeah, we can't call everything adultery because everybody gets kicked out, as opposed to saying, hey, it's that much more kind approach. We're all we all have sinned, and whether that's greed or whatever, those sorts of things. Let's help people work through this and understand that. Yes, like in my case, I committed adultery. I hate the fact that I did. But I've learned to live with it. I've learned to make amends. I've learned to change my behavior. It stings when I think about that. You know what I mean?
Do you know the only way though that people can make change is by telling the truth?
That's right.
So like the church has to tell the truth. Like they have to really get to this place where like truth is more important than protecting perception.
Right.
That's that is more in alignment with Yeah. Another way that this can sort of manifest is like this idea that, well, me as the victim, as the betrayed partner, I need to offer grace to my husband so that he sees God's love through me. That's my cross to bear, and that's going to move me towards sanctification. And that is just one of those, I think, again, in a lot of different scenarios, it ends up being a perpetuating cycle of I keep stepping over my boundaries. I keep swallowing my words. I keep shoving my emotions down. And over time, I feel more and more dead inside. So that, if that is the result of that belief, that's not sanctification. Sanctification should be a process of getting closer to God. And the closer you get to God, the more peace you feel inside. So if a belief that you have that is coming from an idea of faith leads to more discord or more death or more fear or more depression inside your body, that is not leading you towards sanctification. Sanctification, because making choices, even when they're difficult, knowing that they're the right choices and getting closer to God through this process, even when it is difficult choices, that actually leads to more peace in your soul, not more conflict and not more, right. Physical, spiritual, emotional ailments in your body.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good delineation. Is like, does this choice bring me peace because I am so fully aligned with it and it is ordained by God and I am in alignment. It is in alignment with my values and it's helping me live into my purpose as a human being. That kind of thing, when it is truly from God, is going to have peace and love and groundedness associated with it, even when it's a hard choice, even when it's a difficult sacrificial choice. But if the same type of sacrificial choice brings a lot of conflict, a lot of I can't use my voice, a lot of I can't have a boundary in my life, I have to be, I step over my intuition all the time, then that's coming from something different. I would say not sanctification. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
No, I totally would. As you're talking about this, I think I guess what I keep thinking about is this whole suffering and what that means. And the things that come to mind for me are you're in a concentration camp. Like you have no choice, right? You are completely held there. It's completely against your will. If you could get out, you would. All of those people would. I think about.
Well, we can talk about it like very much in a much more relatable present day sense with your betrayed partners and addicts. Like we've talked very openly and honestly that the suffering and the discomfort and the pain increases before things get better.
That's right.
So it's not like we're saying like that. Oh, you make the right decision and you're not going to feel uncomfortable. No, it is uncomfortable. What I'm saying is there is a peace that comes with that discomfort because you know it's leading you towards the thing that is good.
Right.
And so I think that is, you got to check in on that intuition. You got to check in on that piece. So what we're talking about is your suffering is holy peace. And so a lot of times that keeps women in this place of I can't, really I have no power in my relationship. And also a lot of times it's leading into this idea that like, well, if it's pornography or sometimes even if it's an affair, like people really don't, a lot of times in the church, they don't feel free to put divorce on the table. And I just made some posts on social media about this recently, just about, God does set boundaries and we know that divorce is not a sin. And if we know that divorce is not a sin, then it reshapes our thinking around it completely because I think it's communicated as if it is a sin. And we know that it's not because God divorced Israel in Jeremiah. And why did he divorce her? For her infidelity. And so if God got to the point where he set boundaries and they were overstepped and he was able to separate from that relationship, then we as humans, we have less capacity than he does, so that is a viable option for us. So that's just something to sort of think about in terms of like, from a spiritual perspective, the God of the universe sets boundaries.
Right.
And he does uphold high standards.
Yeah. And part of our life process is to try to be more like him. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So the second myth would be anyone who wants to should lead recovery groups. I hate saying that because we need more people willing to lead recovery groups. We want anybody that feels the call to do it. But here's the caveat. This is the piece here. Men who are not in recovery should not be leading recovery groups.
Yeah. And I think this is an important thing to talk about. So there is sobriety, right? There is sobriety. There is recovery. And recovery has a spectrum to it, right? So I started leading groups a little over a year into my healing journey. I am much more effective today at leading groups than I was 3-ish years ago. And so you're gonna learn a lot when you lead a group. You're gonna learn a lot about yourself and how you show up and how you help people, and you're gonna make mistakes. Like I talked about the first thing that I made a little bit of a mistake this week, and so you're gonna make mistakes, and that's all really really
in
important.
Connecting with someone, not in your sobriety,
right? That's really really important to your healing. But one of the things that what I was reminded of this week is when you take charge of a group and when you start to lead those people, they really really look up to you. So it's important for you to be vulnerable in those conversations and be able to talk about the things that bother you. But if, let's say, you're a 7-year recovery group leader and you're relapsing all the time and you're angry and you're getting in fights with your wife and all of these different things.
I wouldn't even say the emotional side, just the relapse side.
Mm-hmm. But it's the
terminology that, again, we have to be honest with ourselves. If we cannot be honest in our language with ourselves and engage in that self-reflection and that truth, then we won't ever get to the place of deep recovery. And so that's where I'm saying, I think sometimes in recovery communities, the language is not honest.
Right.
So people will say, I've been in recovery for 10 years. I relapsed 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. And one of the things that does come up, and I know Pure Desire recommends this as far as like group leaders, they always recommend that there be a co-leader to kind of help out with the burden there. And they also recommend that, hey, if you do relapse, maybe it's time for you to step back for a period of time. And get some good health and some cleanup. And maybe there's some things that was a little unexpected. And then once you're ready to kind of step back into it, because you certainly have a story to tell. You certainly have gifts. Your woundedness is going to be where you're going to work your biggest miracle with people. And I think that's really, really important. So we don't want to we don't. The message is, hey, if you're relapsing, don't think that you can ever run groups. It means that you've got some things that you've got to work on. If you've got a passion,
work the process first,
right? If you've
use it so that you can teach it.
If you have a passion to run groups, think about it. It's always like, would you go to a doctor that was very unhealthy? Would you go to a mechanic that couldn't even start his car in the morning? Like there's some different things. Like, certainly when somebody's really good at that, all of us want to work.
Well, let's put it into like the addiction perspective, like with like something super relatable, because I feel like we hold different standards with this. If you had an alcoholic saying, "I've been in recovery for 10 years. I just had a drink last week."
Yeah, it would probably throw you for a loop.
And then that same alcoholic is trying to teach you how to be sober.
Right. Yeah.
But they couldn't be sober last week.
Right.
It's like, I don't know why we look at porn so differently.
Mm-hmm.
There is a weird disconnect in our society about pornography and the terminology we use, and people do not want to differentiate between sobriety and recovery. And any period of time that we've been in sobriety, we want to call it recovery, and if we relapse, we still say we're sober. Like, I don't understand that, because I think part of it is that we're not being honest. But we have to be, because that's the opposite of addiction. Addiction is the self-qualifying, it is the minimization, it is the self-lying, it is the lying to others, it is all of this kind of stuff. So in order to, if we want to heal, we have to bring all of that to the light and be like, I haven't been honest with myself.
Right.
I'm not fully sober. I haven't addressed the issues that got me here because I'm still struggling with that.
Right.
And to the point that I went to my old coping mechanism. My coping mechanism is still on the table. If the coping mechanism is still on the table, it's not recovery.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on you when you're trying to lead by example. That's having been in the leadership field for decades now. Sometimes that pressure's there, and so, but it does help you when you think about it from the sense of, hey, if you want to lead by example, what does that mean to people? So that does mean that you're honest about things. That does mean that you're really engaged in your own recovery work to make sure that what you bring to the table is the most healed gift that you can for those men or women that are coming into those groups. And so what is that? And I think, to your point, you're right. People will say they're in recovery while they're relapsing. Well, that's just false. Recovery is number one, you have to be in sobriety, but it's all these other things: identifying your fears and feelings, being honest, making eye contact, showing up the way you're supposed to show. Recovery has a long list of definitions. I was actually, the faster scale, when you go into the Freedom Fight app, when you're in recovery, which is one of the top things, it's got about 12 things that defines recovery. So every morning when I open up my Freedom Fight app and I'm checking in, I'm looking at all 12 of those and saying, which one of those really resonates with me today? Am I more open and honest about my feelings? Have I stopped making eye contact? No, I'm making great eye contact. So it does kind of, I'm increasing in relationships with others. That's recovery.
Yeah.
Those are clear definitions. But yeah, I think it can be really damaging to somebody else's healing journey if you're not in sobriety. And it can really make them lose hope. It's that vision that you've talked about that you were able to deliver for me is, oh no, you don't ever have to do this again.
Yeah.
And so
you have to really believe that.
Yeah, and you got to work on it, because it's, if you're an addict, well, of course it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
When I would say, I'm just going to throw this out there and see if you agree. I'd say give yourself 6 months in solid sobriety, like no relapsing, before considering running a group. But then if you are like significantly past that, we encourage you to run a group. Oh my gosh, please run a group. We need more people running groups. We need it. We need it.
Yeah.
Do your own work first. But then, yes, we would love for you to pass it on. And to your point, I think you were kind of indicating this a little bit earlier. When you're, if you are solidly in sobriety, leading groups can maybe even help you, because you were talking about recovery being a spectrum. Leading groups can help you get past that and into, because it really forces you, like teaching something really forces you to think about it differently, and listening to the other people in your group and having to think about, how do I encourage them? How do I offer some guidance? It helps you bring your recovery to a deeper level. So get into solid sobriety first. And then if you feel pretty good about it, yes, start leading groups, please. But the idea is, to your point, maybe have a co-leader, be honest every moment of the day. So with yourself and with others. So if there is some sort of setback, you can kind of step out of that position. Or maybe leading the group after you're in solid sobriety, you're now practicing the things that will help you stay in recovery for real in a way that you weren't before. Because maybe leading now, I have to be the example. I have to actually check in with people when I do have anxiety, or when I'm speeding up, or when I'm stressed out, or when I'm overwhelmed, right? So we're definitely not saying, hey, you have to be like 6 years in. No, like you said, you were in like recovery like a year. And probably at that point, I would say early recovery, but solid sobriety. And you started doing it, and it's just helped you get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But I was so like, in the beginning, I was like, you are not going to lead groups. Like, we need to figure this out. You were doing some leadership stuff at the church we went to at the time. And we were like, that is inappropriate for you to be leading anything right now, because you have to focus on getting yourself stabilized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the final thing, it's like, what's the best thing you can give to your kids? And that's the healthiest version of you. That's the best thing you can give to your kids. And the same thing goes for groups. What's the best gift that you can give to groups? And it's the healthiest version of yourself. One of the things I always try to do in groups, and I think I do this 99% of the time, is we always do check-ins. I always make sure I check in too. I'll say, hey, this is what I had this week. This is what was going on. This is what was bothering me, and stuff like that. So it's important for me to have those conversations too.
Yeah. Okay. Myth number 3, addiction is permanent. And this is the disease versus trauma model that we talk about a lot. This is the messaging that addiction is a disease and it's permanent and not something that's ever completely reversible. And I think this is frustrating at this point, because there have been so many advances in science and in understanding the brain and in understanding the chemistry that goes into these patterns. So, and I mean, even just like brain scans and things of that nature that show, no, like literally the damage to your brain is reversible. And neuroplasticity and the science behind neuroplasticity has neuroplasticity. I was like, there's something wrong with that word. Neuroplasticity has shown us that you can literally rewire and change the connections in your brain to be different.
I have a joke, because as you were trying to say neuroplasticity, I was thinking about you last week trying to say sesquicentennial.
I can't do it.
So you can rewire your brain to be able to say sesquicentennial.
I could.
Yeah.
I don't care to put that effort in, though.
Okay. All right.
That's not hurting myself or others, so
yes,
we're good.
Of course.
Okay, so yeah, so it's this idea that I think at this point, like I get maybe, 3 decades ago when sex addiction was just sort of being recognized, and I'm not sure when alcohol addiction was recognized, probably much earlier than that. But like, they were sort of basing it on the addiction model at the time. And for a long time, it was a disease model. And I think that just, at this point, ignores science, and it ignores all of the progress that we've made in terms of understanding trauma and how trauma impacts people, and the ability that the brain has to change, the ability that the body has to renew itself, the ability that we have now with all of the different trauma modalities that exist to address our past and address our emotional healing in ways that maybe we didn't have access to before. And I really see so often that when people have this mentality, both the betrayed and the betrayer, on both sides, when one of you holds this mentality that it's a permanent thing that we will always struggle with to some extent, they suffer from that. And it limits their healing, and it keeps them emotionally stuck from really moving into a place of deep recovery.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because I so firmly believe that as human beings, we are created in a way that we can accomplish that.
Well, and I think as you're talking about this, and I'm reminded of a couple things. The first is, and there's a lot of messaging out there on vision and creating vision for your life, and you don't get better unless you become daily aware. I will say that I'm much more aware today of the things that are going on around me relative to inappropriateness and things like that than I ever was before. So maybe the outcome of your healing from this addiction is you're like, I don't think I'm going to watch that, or maybe I, and I've said this before on the podcast. My acting out pattern was in private, right? And so I'm very aware of that now. I'm very aware of what that means, much more so than I ever was before. And so I also know that sometimes you will ask me, like if something hard is going on or something like that, you'll go, do you feel like that, could lead you to thinking about acting out or whatever? And I don't laugh at that because I'm not trying to make light of your fear, but I'm always like, actually, no, acting out is so far away from me because I've changed that. What I am more aware of is my feelings. And so like if let's say we have a disagreement and we don't end it very well, I may be filled with anxiety. And so I know that I've got to kind of work that through. So once again, the impact of going through a healing process should be that you are more aware of the things around you, of the patterns that lead to unhealth. And those could be any number of things. So, that is an outcome of going through an addiction recovery process. You gave the example of the alcoholic, right? Alcoholics who are successful in their recovery are aware of the influences around them. They're aware of their feelings and what they might need to do to check in with a sponsor or something like that. And addiction recovery is no different than any of that. So yes, you do heal from your trauma, but you gain a greater sense of emotional intelligence about your own feelings and the feelings of others that you're interacting with.
Well, the other thing that I think this leads to is sort of connecting it to the piece before the faith piece. Well, if my partner is going to be an addict and this is just his struggle to bear, then as the partner, that's just my struggle to bear. And so I just have to learn how to suffer with that. And I have to sort of override some of my nervous system and my intuition and my gut instinct. And I'm not allowed to get too upset about it. Like I always have to have a gentle answer. I always have to be like really understanding because this is hard for them, right? And yeah, we're not talking about not being a compassionate, empathetic person, but you're also allowed to have opinions and feelings because this is hurting you. And because pornography and sex addiction specifically is infidelity, like it falls into a different category where it very much is okay for you to have thoughts, feelings, and opinions, boundaries, and consequences associated with that behavior because it directly impacts your emotional and physical safety.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I don't know, there are genetic factors certainly that lead people, to have these tendencies. There are traumatic things that people go through. There's family of origin. There's the way people learn how to interact with others. There's attachment wounds. There's all sorts of things. So yes, we acknowledge that, and we absolutely, that's what we're talking about. Like we have to be brave enough to face all of those. And that's why we talk so much about the difference between sobriety and recovery, because a lot of times we will get into sobriety and feel really good about it. But if we don't address, I think this is the key, is like when people don't realize that there are these deeper pieces to address, then they don't get into recovery. And so the history of addiction work has literally just been teaching people how to get into sobriety, because they're like, this is a disease, this is a lifelong thing. And so with that mentality, all you have to focus on is sobriety and, one day at a time kind of thing. And there's a time for that, which is the initial phase of getting into sobriety. Certainly, absolutely. And there is a time and place and benefit to that. But when you just stop there, you are taking a gift away from people by not telling them that something better is out there for you. Right. Why, like I would be hurting you if I did not say, hey, you don't have to struggle with this forever. Like you can actually get beyond that. And I want that for you because that is a happier, freer, better life where you can do more good in the world. But if you are so focused every day on like not doing something, that is inhibiting, as opposed to having freedom from that thing and then going, well, what can I put my energy towards? If your energy is towards not relapsing and that's like a permanent thing for you, that is so exhausting.
Yeah.
Okay, myth number 4. Love this one. Women can't have autonomy in marriage.
I was going to talk to you about that a little bit later.
Oh, I just can't. This is the whole hierarchy thing. This is the whole, you have to respect men because they're men, not because they do anything that deserves respect. And this just like kills me, specifically when stuff like this happens, because it's like, it's the whole, they lead even when they're like, how can you lead when you're an addict? How can you, how can I respect decisions that you're making when you're an addict brain. And again, I think this ignores science. I think this ignores the reality of relationships. I think this is not biblical at all, because I believe in egalitarianism and that we are created equal in purpose and all this kind of stuff.
Well,
equal in value.
What's interesting about that is you talk about this in the church, and because of certain Bible verses, has interpreted this. But when you look at secular leadership theory and the study of outstanding military, business, civilian leaders, they always talk about respect is earned, not given. You don't go into an organization. I learned this at West Point, and then when I was running, military organizations and everything, like, I have to earn their respect because I am there for them, and I provide a vision, and I live to that vision. I try to set the example. I take care of them. I do, I do all of these things. And so, like, secular leadership theory talks about that. Like, it's, it's all, but for some reason it gets skewed.
We never take these things to, like, I don't know, the full end of the idea when we're talking about it, right? So it's like, if you took that to the full end, it's like, okay, well, Jeffrey Dahmer was a male. I don't know, was he married? I don't know if he was married. Probably not.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, like, if you were married to Jeffrey Dahmer in the Christian community, like, or let me clarify, in some Christian communities, okay?
Right.
Like, this is not, all right. In some Christian communities that believe in complementarianism, because obviously we're Christian and we don't believe this.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you believe in complementarianism and you're married to Jeffrey Dahmer, well, you just have to respect him because he's the leader of your home and he's the male.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That brings clarity to the situation. Like, excuse me, you don't think I'm more in my right mind and I'm more capable of being a leader than him?
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah. So same thing in addiction. And I think what people, again, we have to go back to, like, what we actually know scientifically now with the research of the brain and all this kind of stuff. Addict brain is a thing. There is damage to the brain when someone is an addict. There is less blood flow to the brain. There is less oxygen to the brain. Addicts work from their limbic system. That is their emotional, not their logic center.
Right.
It goes through the emotional center first and then maybe hits the logic center. Most of the time when we think, we process it through the logic center first and then it hits the emotional center. And so addict brain is a real thing. Addict brain is a real thing. Addict brain is a real thing. And I need every wife out there to hear this because there's so much internal conflict around, well, I can't set a boundary or I need him to want recovery. And that is true. He has to eventually want it. But in the first, like, 3 months or so, when we're getting stabilized and we're connecting to resources and we're setting boundaries and we're doing all this thing, a lot of times, like, that was like, I was doing all that. I said, you're going to go to this therapist. You're going to go to this group. Here's a book for you. Here's that. I was setting everything up. And there was nothing wrong with me doing that because I was like, you need help.
Yeah.
You were clearly in distress.
Right.
So I had no guilt, no conflict, no nothing. I was like, this is what is happening. Now, if you push back on that, that would have been your choice.
Yeah.
But you were in distress. You were in addict brain. So there's nothing wrong with someone going, I am healthier than you are right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is just an example, I think, of, there are time and places where one of the partners in a relationship is going to know more or is going to be more capable or is going to have more talent or more capability in one area. And that person, quote unquote, leads in that area for a period of time. And then maybe there's a different situation and it changes.
Well, one of the most effective things to do when you're trying to teach somebody how to lead, and this is just from my own business experience, is they need to learn how to be an excellent follower. And so you don't get automatically put into positions. You demonstrate your competence by being able to follow well, effectively. You demonstrate, you're able to move into positions by demonstrating competence, right? So like, certainly my say on financial matters in the first 2 months was shot, right? But over time, I've been able to kind of work through that because I've proven to you again. I've been able to kind of
let it go.
Yeah,
because I was like, I don't want to be involved in the money.
Yeah. So like now,
so now I have all access, but you're doing it all again.
Yeah. So I'm doing it, and because I've demonstrated integrity, I've demonstrated integrity.
Yeah,
I didn't just say give.
You didn't say 2 years in, you weren't like, woman, I'm the man.
Yeah.
I'm in charge of the money again.
Yeah,
no, I was like, You were,
Right.
you fought, you respected the boundaries that I set. You recognized that you had broken the trust with money, and so that they were reasonable boundaries. And they made you uncomfortable sometimes, but you were like, I get it. I'm taking ownership of this. Life's going to be uncomfortable for a while.
Yep.
And so you just sat with it. And then eventually it was like, you kind of took over the money again, and I really didn't want to handle it.
I will also say, like, I did not grow up in a complementarian thing. So I do remember, and I think we've told this story on the podcast. It was like week 1, and you go, just so you know, what did you say? You're no longer the
You're
head
no
of,
longer the head of the house or
household.
the leader in the I don't know. I don't even know. Because in my like religious processing, it was interesting because like I was always raised complementarian. And I kind of like have like this gut instinct like against it.
Yeah.
But then I married you, and I was like, oh, he's so nice, and we never fight, and there's never really a situation where like you would ever hold that over my head. So I guess I could see like in, you know, healthy relationships how it's possible to believe that and feel okay about it. But then this happened, and I was like, oh, hell no.
I mean, and
I was like, you can't tell me anything.
And I remember being like, I'm the head of the household.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I don't know what you're talking about. But I think it's like, you know, like once again, we're talking about this marriage thing relative to complementarianism. But I always like to bring in things that I've heard in the leadership world. And they always say, it's kind of funny. They go, one of the best forms of government is a benevolent dictator, right? You know what I mean? So it's kind of funny because you're like, well, because there's no bureaucracy, but that person is always acting in the best interest. You think, what does benevolent mean, right? You know, it's somebody who can make decisions, but takes every input and is kind. And you know what I mean? So like
Patrick, a benevolent dictatorship would still be complementarianism. So
I'm just saying, I'm saying that like
delete.
Well, it's just a funny thing because it's kind of like what the first word in that 2-word phrase is benevolent.
Yeah, the idea that's negative is that one person is in charge. The idea that works is when there's mutuality,
kindness, and all of those things. Yeah.
So part of what goes into this is this, and listen, I'm always going to turn this around because like with addiction and everything I've talked about, like I believe that men are so much more than monkey brains. Like you are capable. Like you do not have to. Recovery is this idea that external things don't control us. And I would also translate that as your brain doesn't control you. Like you're more than your brain. Like you are a soul, you are a spirit. And so there is this level of recovery that is like, hey, stuff doesn't control me. I am living into my values and stuff like that. So that kind of plays into what we're talking about here. Women can't have autonomy in marriage, or this belief. This really plays into the mentality that men are fragile and their egos need to be protected. Ugh. And then that translates as women, you can't have a voice, you can't push back, you can't be in charge even when you're more capable. Because if you do, then it's emasculating. First of all, recovery requires the death of the ego. So there's that. And then nothing can emasculate you if you are deeply in your masculine.
Right.
Would you disagree with that?
No. I think healing is you move through the world and things kind of move at you and you go, okay, well, that's how you feel. I'm not going to allow myself to be emotionally brought down.
Yeah. Well, I think it's this idea that like, again, the response of the betrayed partner has some sort of impact on like the outcome of the betrayer.
Yeah.
Like, how about we just get to both be individuals
that take personal
responsibility
and grow and all of
and
those
set boundaries.
things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, man, if I was in charge of your masculinity, ugh.
Yeah, thank goodness you're not.
And here's the thing, like, I think you're so much more valuable than that. Like, I think that I don't have to protect your ego. I don't have to protect it because, first of all, it needs to be challenged in addiction because it's part of what keeps addiction alive.
Right.
But an ego is different than self-worth. right? Like, and I'm not responsible for your self-worth.
Right.
I'm responsible for my value and healing my wounds so that I can develop my self-worth. And I'm also responsible for showing up in the world, being a kind person who lives in integrity, who works on my relationship with you, and we work on communication and the relational and stuff and all this kind of stuff. But I am not in charge. I cannot control healing or, those wounds for you. Like, that's your job. That is part of your healing. And so I think this puts so much pressure on the women that is basically like, he's fragile and you have to have more sex with him. And then you also like can't set a boundary. And if you push too hard, he's going to break. And it's like, well, how come that's her fault? Why can't we just be teaching individuals to be strong, healed individuals? And again, I think that stops short of this idea that people can actually recover. And recovery truly, truly does bring a tremendous amount of resilience. If we keep people stuck in this pre-healing, pre-recovery place, it is very fragile. Yeah, I would agree with you. People are breakable in that state and super fragile. So let's encourage people that we can go beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think it was the first 6 months it was really hard. I needed a lot of support. Up to the 2-year mark, I was still probably making some decisions. I wasn't relapsing, obviously. I wasn't looking at anything, but some relational decisions, some think through decisions that weren't optimal either. But over time, I was able to kind of learn how to grow and take those things, which is all part of that 3 to 5 years. So you need to support people through that 3 to 5 years. Or hold on a second. Those people need support. It's not your job to, you can grow to respect the work they're putting in because they're putting in the work, right? And, but you don't say, well, I'm going to respect you because you're my husband on day one when I found out about your secret life. And so I think it's really important that
I respect you as a human being.
Well, yeah.
Because you've earned it.
Right.
Because you of the way you treat me, of the way you've worked on recovery, of the way you take ownership. Man, if you did not take ownership, though, it would be hard to respect you. If you just hurt me that badly.
Are you threatening me?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, right now.
I don't need your validation.
In front of everybody.
I don't need your
good.
I don't need your validation.
Because you don't have
to feel masculine.
Fragile masculinity. Oh. So bad. Oh, I hope we're not offending people on this podcast.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things too, I was thinking about this for the betrayed partners, and it's kind of matches what I said at the beginning. This process is really hard on you, and it's really hard. And kind of what we're indicating here is there's a lot of predetermined beliefs that you come into this situation with, and it's really hard. So, you owe it to yourself. You're worthy of being able to be educated and healed and all of those things. So don't skirt that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what you'll find is like, you're so happy that your betrayer is now getting some recovery, but then you shortchange your own recovery. And so then all of a sudden the betrayer kind of moves past you on recovery and is really developing some healthy habits. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, something's off here. The mutuality is off. And it's partially because maybe they're ahead of you and in some of the healing that they've done. Don't be afraid to engage in your own healing. You're well worth it.
And vice versa. That happens all the time too.
Yeah.
Because we work in sort of different demographics, you run groups where the men come in and they want to do all the work. And then sometimes maybe some of their partners don't engage in healing work as much. And then I work with a lot of women who come in and they want to do all the work and they do all the healing work. And sometimes their partners don't want to do all the healing work. And so it can go either direction.
Right.
But either direction is ultimately harmful in the long run.
That's right.
If you choose to stay together, it needs to be this path where like we feel like we're on the same team and we're heading towards the same goal and we help each other get there.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like there was one more thing I was going to say about that.
Add another thing.
I'm singing a lot in today's episode. I think the thing that we want to encourage you with is just that we believe that humans are capable of so much more than what a lot of these a lot of this these stories and a lot of these beliefs lead us to believe, and they keep people so stuck. And we really want to encourage you that there's more available. And I think, when you've experienced something and when you feel the depth of something and when you tap into truth, that was one of the things I was going to say, is that we want to let you know that it's out there. Yeah, what I was going to say about truth is going back to that idea of that internal conflict. So when you are making these decisions and you're moving forward in your healing journey, check in with why you believe things and why you're doing things. Because if there is conflict internally, then do a little research. Like, where did this belief come from? Where did this idea come from? If I don't feel fully aligned with something, question it. Question it, think about it, figure out why you believe that. Is it something that was communicated like decades ago and it stuck? Is it because you saw your parents act a certain way? Is it, where did it come from? And why do you believe that? And do you believe that today? Because really, when we are moving into health, again, even if it's a difficult decision and it's a hard decision, there is a sense of peace that comes with it. So I just kind of want to reiterate that, because I think a lot of times there's a lot of internal conflict, with this process. And like, I feel like I should, but there's something inside of me that says no. Or I feel like I have to do this, but I just I can't get myself to go there. And then if you really feel like you should do something and you can't get there, a lot of times it's like, then it turns around on this guilt. There's something wrong with me, and a lot of times that comes in when I'm working with betrayed partners around like forgiveness or boundaries or, the leadership thing or, different things like that. And so that's why we're just sort of encouraging you. Things that are rooted in truth come with peace, even when they're hard.
Yeah.
And so, question that, challenge that, think about it. But we believe that both individuals in this relationship are capable of living in truth, living in authenticity, getting to a place of healing where it's just better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what we constantly want to encourage people, that it is possible and we can get there. Anything else on any of these, Patrick?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, hopefully this was encouraging on some level. This was a little bit of, just things that we see that I think keep people stuck. And really one of the biggest reasons we have this podcast is because we want to show that there is a way out of this.
Yes.
There is a place, there is a way, there is a path to living a healthy, happy, grounded, peaceful life again. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we will see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.